live. Nice, nice. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Superlative Podcast. I'm Edward Bushi, one guest. No edits, no post production, just a sharp live conversation about what it really takes to reach higher levels and what comes next. So let's get into it. I want to welcome Rudi, who runs a NeuroTech fund and a solo podcast, and he'll tell you the podcast is doing more for ReeWire Ventures than any pitch meeting ever did. Before we get into your story, would love to know what you are doing at ReeWire Ventures and what you're building right now. And yeah, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Edward, for having me. I'm super excited because this is my first live stream. So I'm familiar with podcasting, but live stream is something else. So I'm super excited about that. So
Yeah.
yeah, about Rewire Ventures. So this is the fund I'm eventually building is about everything that comes through cognitive performance. So, and the reason being is the following. So, in the end of 2020, I noticed something very radical, in particular with adolescent children, that they behave very strangely, in particular in the combination with smartphones and social media. So, the behavior I basically observed was that it was very reminding me of somebody that is a drug addict. And the behaviors you normally see with drug addicts are like stealing, flying, and cheating to get their
Mm-hmm.
fix. And this was the same behavior I saw, and it kind of worried me. And on the other hand, I'm also a father myself, and I saw also the totally opposite with my son. So because I didn't give him a smartphone until just recently, so he didn't grow up with a smartphone at all, and there was always a, let's say, understanding for myself what how you create engagements and what algorithms it does to your brain, but I didn't connect the dots until then. And when I saw that, first of all, I was curious whether this is like just my observation in my small set in my surroundings, or whether this is like a bigger pattern evolving. So I started to do some research, and in particular, the let's say the research from the Sapiens Lab really caught my attention, and I could clearly see that we are like a downward trend when it comes to mental health. And this is not only mental health, is a whole cascade. And the cascade, now you can see it everywhere. Like the cascade is basically when you start to have mental health issues, you automatically starting to have cognitive issues, and then the result is productivity loss. And so what I was or my mission was to find startups in that area that solve these three issues in that sense and contribute to a better society from my perspective, because I think this is way more crucial than everything else, because everything, our whole behavior, everything stems from these two things, cognitive performance and in particular mental health. If we don't have that, we have no holistic health in a broader sense. So I'm super passionate about, and the podcast is also something that I have created in particular to, let's say, spread the gospel on the one hand. But I also found that in the beginning, the first discussions with the LPs, one of the major things that they, as an objection, that told me is like, is the market big enough? And I was like, no, this is a huge thing, but it's almost like nobody was aware back then. But now, with also the lawsuits with Meta and Google and all these different things, and
Mm-hmm.
also thanks to the work of Jonathan Haidt, I think we finally arrived that this is like a major issue which we have to solve in this lifetime. So yeah, I'm super excited about that.
Yeah, and how? What was your background before getting into this? Because like neuroscience is such a huge thing. Yeah, I just
Absolutely.
learned. I just learned it could be in psychology. It could also
Yeah.
be in technology design and how it
Yeah.
wires your brain. But it could also go into medicine. But like, how did you get into this?
Such a such a great question, and I really like. I'm not sure which philosopher says that, but it's always like life is lived forward but understood backwards. And one thing is like I always have been a very let's say odd child.
Mm,
So I had a bit of a struggle to, let's say, connect socially, and not because I was awkward that I couldn't speak to people. It was more that I was very differently in my communication and my behavior and interests.
mm,
So I was not like I couldn't understand how other people were thinking, and so that ignited a like a very like much curiosity about psychology. So I started with basically psychology, and then it led me later to go into neurology to really understand how the brain is wired. And then these things also led me later through my work that I have done, and also my like entrepreneurial endeavors, is to understand like buying behaviors and stuff like that. And then you're starting to understand like how people start to engage, and then you are like really in the intersection of habit creation. And it's habit creation in a way that is done with the mobile apps or any application. Or if you're talking about UX, you are
mm,
very fast about understanding or creating or manipulating people by harnessing different data and understand their behavior, and then starting to modulate that. And this was just my personal interest, but on the other hand, I was a computer scientist who was a programmer. So I
mm,
had like on the one hand this technical understanding, on the other hand this was just my curiosity about like how the brain works, that started to merge. But it really fused together to a, let's say, coherent purpose when I connected the dots, when I observed other children having that. And I believe like my background understanding and was leading to having this like let's say breakthrough insight, because I, on the one hand, it was just my hobby to understand how the brain works, how humans works,
mm,
and on the other hand, like my work was a being software developer, and but at that time I was already in venture capital, building a D by D practice for a small boutique.
mm,
And then I was already like studying also corporate finance in order to like get the theory behind like the practice that I was doing. So at this point everything fused together, like my personal background, my interests, and also I believe like, and that's something first time founders almost forget all the time, is like when I build something or
yeah,
when I want to create something, is there a specific need, and then this
yes. Will people
specific
buy
need.
it? Yes,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
exactly. But there's a caveat to that, because I
Mm,
would consider myself more a visionary. I think there is also a gap between like there's a problem which needs to be fixed. However, people might not be aware that they need to fix it. And I think when I started to have this vision, I could see the problem, I could articulate the problem, but at this point of time, like the awareness of we have a problem and we have to fix it was not
mm,
there.
mm.
Yeah,
Dude, I really like find it admirable, right? That you grew up having it's just like these awkwardness socially, but then you overcame it, and it's so beautiful that you're now at a point where you're chatting with so many people and doing it publicly, right? And I love how you see technology like hijacking people's brains,
yeah.
right, and affecting it in a downward trend. And you're at a point now where you want to catch that and solve for that, or else we won't get out of this downward trend. You mentioned it. How do we know we're in such a cycle down?
Well, I think there's a lot of like indications now. At the beginning, as I said,
Yeah.
like one of the biggest indicator back then, besides of my observation, was the report for the Sapiens Lab.
Mm,
And then of course I had like my intuition telling me that, because as I said, like I had a really clear understanding of the brain and how it works and how malleable and how plastic it was. And one particular, there's a couple of particular books that inspired me or fueled my understanding, and one is like is the Rise of Superhuman by Steve Kotler. In fact, a couple of books by Steve Kotler, and this is more on the side of performance. And the interesting thing was like there is like this state of the brain where it reaches basically super learning, and this is the flow state. And funny enough is like in this particular state, the brain is so plastic that it's able to learn things at a faster rate that is possible, and even so that it could potentially cure um, traumas and also a disease. So in that particular example of Stephen Kotler, so he had Lyme disease, and and his whole body was infected with it, that he could not really like live a normal life. And it happened to happen that a friend of his brought him to surf, although he couldn't walk at this point of time. But something happened, muscle memory kicked in, and he experienced flow for I think 10 minutes. And then he collapsed once again, and he did this for a couple of times until his full body recovered. So besides
Whoa.
of like the whole chemicals that are released in this state has an effect of on your whole body, and it has an effect on your brain. So I understood like the brain is far more plastic than we could ever imagine, because like the old paradigm was basically you are set with what is given to you, and we are not really able to change in that sense. However, like and this book and his research, but there was also another book by the name of by the author of Norman Deutsch, The Brain
Yeah.
That Changed Itself. And this was astounding for me, because I'm not coming from the medical field, although I have in my family a couple of physicians. Is that there are a lot of examples in that book, and one particular was by somebody that has they had a stroke, and he couldn't move at all. And but he had a really dedicated daughter who couldn't accept that he was all now crawling all the time. So what she did is basically she trained him with different modalities over a really long time, until he started to move certain limbs again, and he started walking at the end. And the crazy thing, or the story of that whole book, is it gives you example after example of people that normally would be dubbed as non-recoverable recover themselves, because their brain was able to reorganize themselves. And so also from that book I took away that the brain is so much more plastic that we could ever imagine. And now
Yeah.
combine this plasticity with our with social media, with our brain, and then understanding the habit formation. So
Yeah.
for me this was very very clear at that point of time. So the only thing I needed at this point of time was that if we can see on a larger scale that there is a negative trajectory. And so this was one indication with, as I said, like the Sapiens Lab, but also later, I think in 23, Jonathan Haidt came with the book Anxious
Jonathan Ive.
Generation.
Jonathan Ive
No,
did this. Oh, Hive.
Haidt.
Hyde. Okay,
Yeah,
got you.
yeah, yeah. And he came with the book Anxious Generation. And I highly encourage everyone, in particular if you are a parent, to read that book, because there's a lot of research done, in particular on the numbers. And one thing that is also very crucial, I almost forgot it, that our brain, when it develops, there are like there are certain phases where the brain is even more plastic than it's normal. And this
Yeah.
is
And
in
just for the viewers,
adolescence.
plastic means that it's able to adapt and learn
Yeah.
very fast. Okay,
Yes,
gotcha.
sorry, sorry
Oh no,
for
no, no worries. Yeah,
but that's crucial in order
yeah.
to really understand what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
And this is in the age of 5 to 7, and then in adolescence. And if you combine that with the consumption of mobile phones and so forth, and this is in particular something that that will not help you to evolve or develop your executive function. Your
Mm.
executive function is basically the part of your brain. This is like, one can call it the CEO. It's a
Yeah.
part of the frontal lobe, and it helps you to understand when you are, for instance, distracted or with
Mm.
impulse control. So,
Mm.
and these are the things that you start learn in that age, and it's formed in that age. But when you are exposed with mobile phones and everything that is addictive, it's creating these habits of addiction, you will not fully form this function. And
Mm.
so one thing that is also very important for that function is because it regulates impulse control. It has an impact of mood regulation, for instance, emotional regulation,
Mm.
and all these different things. And then there's also another point of like let's say overstimulation, which can lead to, for instance, to inflammation of the brain as well. So these are like a cocktail of different problems that arose with this consumption. And then in the Sapiens app, you can clearly see the correlation. And from my point of view, the causation is also very much clear, that the earlier you are exposed to mobile phones and and social media, the more you struggle with mental health.
Hmm.
So, and that alone is one indicator, but there are even more. So for instance, I think just recently, I'm not sure from whom that came, but it was figured that in first time since reported human
Yeah.
history, since we report, IQs are going down. And so there are so much indication. And one thing, but this is like my personal observation, is also that we have more, let's say, polarization, and we have no, like, in a, let's say, mainstream nuanced discussions. And I had a conversation with somebody who is in it's specialized in education systems,
Yeah.
Lisa Riegel. She's a PhD, and what she said is like, there's like certain things or certain levels of thinking that you would develop at certain points of time. And multiplistic thinking is the thinking of like understanding that there is not just truth and false. There are like different perspective who can be true at the same times, although they can sound contradicting. And
Yes.
these are the thinking that you develop after you went through certain, like, let's say, development stages. And one particular thing that is important in order to hold that is, for instance, the having a executive function that is working well. So we have, like, as you can see, we have multiple things that are going in this direction, that is a stressor of
Yeah.
our natural development of the brain. And then you combine it, for instance, like how the media and the content is created, so it's highly addictive. And
Mm.
also
The
the
shorts even.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And then you have also the negativity, so we are very much prone for negativity. And then we have also other effects that has a huge impact on our well-being. So for instance, is because we are not like wired for, let's say, exponential, let's say, environments. And
Oh, what does that
now
mean?
it means, for instance, if I see an a line, then I will be afraid of lines because it's directly in my, let's say, field of or in my environment.
Yeah.
However, if I see a line in the TV and I hear about, let's say, a line attacks in the TV, I might consciously understand that this is not a threat for me. However, like my central nervous system is not reacting that way. And if it
Uh,
sees it a couple of times, then my subconscious mind is like, there's a threat and I could be bitten by a lion. Although I know exactly in Switzerland, for instance,
yeah,
where I live, there is no lion.
yeah.
So
Lyme disease. Yeah, yeah,
no,
yeah.
no, no, not a line, like a physical line.
Oh, a
So
physical Lyme. Oh,
yeah,
okay,
yeah,
shit.
yeah,
Okay, yeah, 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 yeah. Thank
yeah.
you for clarifying. Yeah, yeah.
I'm a Swiss. I'm a Swiss native, so
Oh, no
my
worries.
English accent is not perfect.
No, no, no. But you know, Switzerland's a very beautiful country. My brother is living there right
Oh
now.
yeah,
Yeah, in
where?
Bern, in Bern.
Oh,
So, and
okay.
my mom's visiting him, and oh my God, it's like the beautiful weather there. Oh my God. But
Yeah,
yeah, you know, you paint a picture where the brain's very plastic. You have this part of the brain, the frontal part of the brain that regulates emotion and knowing when to stop and focus, right? But that's being hijacked by like technology, mobile phones, but also um, social media, right? You hinted
exactly,
those problem, and it's problematic because these things are exposed to human beings when their brains are the most plastic, between
exactly.
3 and 7 years old. So, from your point of view, like, how do we get out of this? Like, what's the solve here? It sounds like it might not be. Is it just get off your phones?
That's an excellent question, and I'm that's also very important for me, and also for the audience to convey is, I don't believe that technology is inherently bad.
Hmm.
In fact, I'm the opposite. I'm still totally excited by technology. I think what is important is really that we create or we have agency. And
Hmm.
so, in one particular thing, for instance, in particular this problem, I think there is like also we have to create a couple of different solutions in order to really tackle that. I think one thing is, of course, like behavior
Hmm.
and awareness, and I'm like, this is really important. I'm somebody that is not open to the idea to force people. So I'm very libertarian in that sense.
Free
Nevertheless, I
will.
think exactly.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, for children in particular, I believe like it's time to have regulations that gives regulate access to social media for children under the age of 16,
Hmm. Really? Okay.
because we do this also for a lot of different things, and I believe like I don't want to take away the free will of my child, for instance. Nevertheless, I don't put any decisions on my child that is not capable for or to judge the long-term understanding.
Hmm.
So this goes in hand with getting a tattoo,
Hmm.
smoking, drinking alcohol, all these
Of
different
course. Yeah.
things. And I think that's something that is a great value that we have
Uh,
in our Western countries, also almost universal in the world. Nevertheless, currently, and this is also what frustrates me, even in Switzerland, I don't see that this is like really in practice. Like there is no law at this
yeah.
point of time, for instance, in Switzerland, that regulates that. And for me, this is like the easiest thing to do, because if there is a law, then it's automatically solved in the way that now it's the responsibility of the social media platforms to enforce that law.
Hmm.
And there's also a slippery slope on the other hand, because I also not a fan how Australia did it. For instance, they
Yeah.
combine it with a social digital ID, which I'm
Oh.
also not a fan of.
Of course, you're
um,
gonna. Yeah. I've seen that. Yeah.
yeah, and this goes also back to things that Edward Snowden, for instance, revealed, and that's why I believe like we have to be really conscious with these kind of things. So that's why I believe like the easiest way is just have a law, and so the social media platforms need to enforce it.
Hmm.
So which makes it very simple. That
Hmm.
but this is just one part. The other part is, and this is also a different discussion, or part of the whole discussion is it's not that um, the adults just like us doesn't
Mm.
have an impact. Our impact might not be that as severe because we had like a normal, let's say, brain development in that sense. Nevertheless, as we know, our brain is plastic, and if we indulge too much in these platforms and we lose our agency, we have the same problems.
Mm.
So what I see, and what I'm, let's say, I'm a front runner of this, is I see that we will have a similar shift like we had with physical fitness. Our lifestyle changed. We are sitting more, we move less. So what we are going to do now is we go to the gym. 20 years ago, this was very much a fringe idea, and only like Arnold Schwarzenegger and all these guys did it. But it was very a niche experience. Now everybody is in a running club. They are
Yep, yep.
they have a gym membership. It's almost like, first of all, it's something you have to do, and it's also a lifestyle, which is like, let's say, almost it signals, hey, I care of my body, and I believe like it's doing a good thing for me, and I believe like we probably will have something very similar for the mind as well.
Yeah. You know, I was also noticing in Canada
Mm-hmm.
that there were going to be regulations for restrictions on social media, particularly that children, or rather teenagers under 16, cannot use it, right? And I'm like you, like it irks my libertarian senses here, right? But I see your frame of mind now. You it sounds like you treat it like a drug or like alcohol, right? It's not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily banned. It's just access to it is limited. You're not
Mm-hmm.
stopping people from accessing it. You're just putting regulations on the thing itself, and it's very like eye opening that you could frame it that way, and I could see there may be solutions if you frame it that way. That's pretty good.
Yeah, and you have to be very much aware of that. And these are
Mm.
all these different things. As you can see, for instance, let's say with gambling. So this
Mm.
is also something that is highly regulated, and they used, for instance, like behavior psychologists to design all these things. And now we have the same people, or uh, people with a similar background, designing all those apps.
Yep.
And so, for instance, like you at some point we have all these like infinity scrolls, and this is one of the things. For instance, like one of part of our motivation system is dopamine, and the
Yeah. Yeah.
interesting thing how it works is basically will get even like in the anticipation of a
Winning.
reward,
Yeah.
you get a dopamine. And then if you combine this with a reward that is unpredictable, so sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but you keep on going. So this is
Mm.
something that is highly addictive.
Hmm.
And I would argue like most psychologists and behavioral scientists, they understand that. Everybody knows it. But now, as you can see, like every app right now is having this infinity scroll, and it's the same mechanism. It's the
Sorry,
same.
sorry. Infinity scroll, as in like you mean the infinite scroll, like you're on Facebook?
Exactly.
Yeah, the feed
Exactly.
that never ends.
Exactly.
Okay, gotcha.
It's
Okay.
it's the same, it's the same process. It's the same, like it's the same process, just like you have this slot machine with where you
Yeah.
have this arm, and then you see what's the outcome. It's the same mechanism.
Mm.
And so therefore, and this is also something which I also use, for instance, like, of course, you cannot compare it 100% with a drug, but when the difference is with a drug, you add a compound, a chemical compound, and your liver have to extract it and work through that. So you have also the other part. But like, what is your how your motivation system is used is the
Mm.
same. So under the MRI, when you are addicted to something, like the patterns are the same. And
Mm.
so it doesn't matter whether you have like a an app that is highly addictive, or
Yep.
you have a drug that is highly addictive, because of course, as I said, like with a drug, there is a chemical compound that is used, but with an application, it's basically just using your motivation system, which has
Mm.
different layers, and combine it in a way that it creates habits. And as soon as it's a habit and your executive function is not working, you will have you have less agency. And I can tell you something else. So there was a study conducted about flow and traumatic events or PTSD. And you
Mm.
know what is the difference between like experiencing flow and experiencing PTSD or a traumatic event?
Sorry, let's define it first. Like being in flow means when you're getting into a game and then you're passing the ball beautifully, shooting beautifully. You're not even thinking about it. And then someone with
Exactly.
PTSD is like someone wounded mentally from the war, a war or
Exactly.
battle. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah,
Or it could be just be a very traumatic event.
yes, yes. So
And
yeah,
And the biggest difference is because there's like a also for PTSD or traumatic events, you have also a growth effect. Also, there's also neuroplasticity happening. The biggest difference is perceived agency. So in the flow, when you have flow, it's like you feel like you're in full control. Like you are the one that is controlling what is the outcome.
mm,
And then in with a traumatic event, it's something that happens to you. And I argue that when these habits are formed in a way that is, let's say, hijacking you in that sense,
mm,
it's also creating a sense of traumatic event in that sense, because at some point you have no agency anymore over your habits when it becomes a compulsion in that sense. So what I see, or what I feel like, and these things don't have to be underestimated. And I really feel like, to like close the cycle of what you mentioned at the beginning, we
mm,
really have to see it as something that is potentially highly addictive. Just we label, for instance, different drugs like that,
mm.
and also gambling like that. And
Yeah, yeah.
on the other hand, I also believe in free will, and I'm very libertarian. This is also what I like about North America. And but at the same token, I really think, like, in order to really act on free will, one need to understand what is fully going on until you can form a conscious decision.
Yeah, I admire that about you when you have to like balance the two things. Then you can like find a truth out of getting out of this bad situation. So, like tell me about like Rewire Ventures, right? Because
Yeah,
like you stated this problem so beautifully, right? But
thank
like
you.
there are some like ways of like solving it. Like there are probably companies or researchers that are doing certain things. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, of course. So and that's a beautiful thing, and this is what gets me excited. There's a ton, like really a ton of companies in that field that
Mm,
are operating, working on solutions, and very close to breakthroughs, or having already breakthroughs, which are like I almost like call them like human aligned applications or human aligned startups, because
mm,
they are like clearly building the future using also technology that is sometimes in question. For instance, AI or machine learning can work beautifully if we use it for the right tools.
hmm,
Like really, it really it can be something that help us so much. And funny enough, I have also another analogy which I really love to use. It's I feel like we are in a similar time as we had with understanding quantum physics. However, our first like application, or biggest application that we used to after discovery or understanding of quantum physics was the atom bomb.
mm,
Highly controversial. On the one hand, it ended the war. On the other hand, it led to the Cold War and also to the arms race. And I believe, like with AI and machine learning and all these different things, we are probably at a similar um, inflection point where we are like on the brink of so many breakthroughs, but
Yeah.
we have to decide now whether we want to, for instance, like fuel these social media and other applications in a way that they take away our agency and um, doing things that not benefit the whole or broader community, than rather benefiting themselves only, or the people in their company, stakeholders, the employees, etc. And on the other hand, we can create a lot of human aligned ventures, solutions, technologies, and I want to contribute with ReeWire Ventures to tilt it towards the human aligned ventures, because I believe there is no like, because there's also a paradigm in the sense that you need to have like the Googles, the Metas, and all these different things in order to like win big in terms of returns and all these different stuff. I don't believe that. And
Okay.
I would also not condemn them fully in that sense, because part of what they are doing is great. It's just it comes with the caveat, and I believe like we can create better companies that don't have this caveat and still win big. And I believe like these companies are coming, and I can give you an example. For
Yeah.
instance,
Yeah. Please.
something very tangible. So I spoke with an entrepreneur or two basically, and one is a computable. His background is in computable neuroscience, and
Yeah.
what they have built is a video platform
Yeah.
that measures interpersonal synchronicity. What is interpersonal synchronicity? It's basically a measurement of understanding how well you working together by measuring measure certain biometrics. For instance, one thing that is easy: how much somebody talks. Then also, for instance, blood flow, also breath and HRV, for instance, in all these different things, and they can then see how much you are in sync. Because when people
Okay.
are working together beautifully, their brain waves start to synchronize, and so they can measure that. And it's of course a combination with machine learning and AI. And the funny thing is, this is a standard large language model in the background, so everything is standard, but it's just built together uh, differently. And now you can assess in full time how much some teams are working together. And I think that's such a beautiful application. And before that, this was something that you can either feel and then you see it on the result. Now it's measurable how well a team is synchronized. And yet now again, the application, imagine me as a venture capitalist being able to have a pitch meeting with a startup, and then also like having my gut feeling about the team dynamics, but also back it up with data, which is based on biometrics. Of course, you have to argue that you have the argument with the data and the privacy, but just assume the consent is given for
Yes.
everybody. And now, besides of your gut feeling, you have also the data that backs it up. And I feel like this is the vision I have always, is like um, working with left and right brain together, being analytic, but being also like taking into account creation, emotions, all these different things, and using both sides of your brain. And for me, this is like a beautiful application for that. It's like I
Yeah.
have my gut feeling, my feeling about how I what I observed, but I can also back it up with data and see whether my gut feeling is aligned. And if not, then it's also data for me to understand, okay, why I still have this feeling. Is there something I didn't observe?
Why wasn't I
Maybe I
not in
have.
sync? Yeah.
Exactly. So that's and on the other hand, it's also a tool for calibration in that sense. So I can even improve my gut feeling by having something that helps me to calibrate it. In addition, so there's so many things in that regard, where I believe like if we can give these kind of companies the funding that they need,
Yeah.
the also the guidance that they need, and also the connections and all these different things, I think they will find their market. And I'm 100% comfortable that there will be people paying for that, because as I
Yeah.
said, like the data suggests that we will have this crisis, and it's already starting. Like the productivity is where the pain comes from mental health and the cognitive decline.
Shit, man, that's really powerful. You were talking about how you were using that. You could use that technology by when talking with teams, but I could also see it. And you probably are thinking about this too, with sports teams, right?
Yes.
Like we play baseball here a lot in
Oh,
Toronto, right? So
yeah.
the people are like far apart, but the batter knows and coordinates with the people in the bases, and the bases like they either run or don't run to complete a circuit, right? And they have to
Hmm.
be in sync. And you could, it's cool that you could like measure that. You could
Yeah.
have teams work better. I can see an application like coming in
Yeah.
for that, and
And
teams would
and
love
I
that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that, I think that's the beautiful thing of our technology progression is like we have all these different convergence. I mean,
Mm.
in that particular field, you can clearly see now you have this conversion of understanding of the brain, neuroscience, and then we have technology, and then we have even physics. And there are
Mm.
so many other things. Also, there's another thing that I spoke with an investor.
Mm.
They are the biggest investor in mental health, in particular, also like the medical side of it, like the
Yeah.
regulated side of it. And what he explained to me is like that they are now working on temporal interference. So
Oh,
basically,
okay.
that's the ability to go very deep into the brain and switch on neurons. For instance, in particular, people that have like a deep depression, so you can, let's say, ignite new neural pathways with temporal interference. And what it is basically it's a special wave that is created that acts almost like a scar pill, but it's not invasive. And these
It's
are
just a
like,
wave. It's just a
yeah,
wave.
it's just the like high energy wave that is able to as I said, like create or signal or new neural pathways. And it's so exciting. And
Mm.
this is, I think, also as a message for either entrepreneur
Yeah.
or investors, is we have so much convergence, like the convergence of like either fields with technology. And I believe also in education we have to ask ourselves is like we have to think more holistically, because all the breakthroughs will come through the convergence of different fields. And I believe
Mm.
like if we focus on that, then there will be so many breakthroughs. And this is what excites me.
Yeah, I totally get the idea of convergence because I was reminded by another talk with another guest, and he was talking about how in the drone and automation industry, like
Yeah.
we have makers of drones that are really good at making a drone fast, or making a
Hmm.
drone, good at landing. All of these all these companies are just focused on engineering one and optimizing for one outcome, right? But the real opportunity is like completing a workflow or a circuit of work
Yeah.
when you use all of these things together. So I can really um, uh, really see where the conflagration of confluence of all these things are come together.
Yeah.
So, this has been a really like awesome conversation. But I want to ask one more thing because
Yeah,
you
sure.
are also a podcaster and
Yeah.
you promote the mission of ReeWire Ventures and like and about the problem here. Like could you like tell us about like why did you start podcasting and how does it fit in?
That's a great question. And it fits in it hits so many different dimensions for me. First of
Yeah.
all, one thing that I understood very early about myself is like I get excited about learning new things and engage in meaningful conversations that feeds my curiosity. So that is
Mm,
one thing. And then the other thing is also it's a kind of a, let's say, field mapping device in that sense, because I engage with people that are either researching stuff, building stuff, or investing in certain things. So I have, like, in real time, the possibility to engage with these people and understand what is going on, like on almost on a ground level, while still validating my understanding at the same token. And
mm,
then, of course, like, this has a network effect in that sense, that I have, on the one hand, deal flow through
yeah.
entrepreneurs, either the entrepreneurs I'm directly talking to, or most of the time entrepreneurs know other entrepreneurs. So that
Mm,
is also a something that adds to that. And on the other hand, it's also like possibility for me to, let's say, create awareness and share it with, like, potential LPs, for instance, but also show it to a different audience, that they can benefit from that as well. And I have also, for instance, the people I'm talking to, they are in some way, shape, or form, they might be leads for something I'm offering as well. So there
mm,
are so many layers on top of that. But I wanted to do a podcast for fairly long, and now it's also, as I said, like, I just enjoy speaking about things that excites me, and I just love to learn. And the beautiful thing, that it feeds so many different layers of what is
yeah.
important for me, for my company, and how I move forward, that it's just beautiful. And I love these things that hits, like, different layers of benefits, at the same token. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really like amazing how it all comes together. And you know what? I really appreciate how like I'm also learning too. Like the field of neuroscience, right, is pretty like compelling. The problem is real, and I wouldn't have like discovered it or uh, had you not like put it so eloquently. So I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate that. So yeah, before we close off, Rudy, like for folks who want to get in touch with you
Yeah.
and rethink and at ReeWire, how what's the best way that they can contact you?
I think the best way is on my website, is on rewire .vc.
Mm-hmm.
And the other way is also to engage with my content, is on Rewire podcast, which is Rethink podcast. Excuse me. As written with two e's, and I'm happy for every engagement. And for instance, my email is r adigbli at rewire.vc. So if you want to send me an email, feel free. So this is how you can find me, and this is how you can engage with my content.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful, and yeah, would I'd love to like work with you also in such a way that I'd love to. I come across a lot of people working in medtech and neurotech and deep tech. Would love to like forward them to you as well. Yeah, I
Please
think
do it.
yeah, you got some really good things that you're working on. So yeah, Rudy, I just want to say like this has been a wonderful discussion. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your insights and discussing the problems that we live in, but also a way out. So at that, I want to say thank you and thank you to the guests who stuck on and watched the whole podcast with us. And yeah, until the next episode. And yeah, check Rethink Podcast, guys.
Yeah.
At that, yeah, thank you so much.